African presidents from countries including the DR Congo and Senegal have called for the IMF to triple the amount of money available to Africa under the fund's special drawing right, reserves to about 100 billion, it's actually 150 by the way, to support countries that are hard hit by the coronavirus pandemic. The leaders were attending the African Economies Funding Summit in Paris this week, alongside French President, the host, Emmanuel Macron, who also called for the COVAX vaccine sharing scheme to double its vaccination target for Africa by the end of this year. Joining me for this postscript conversation is Agnes Gitau, managing partner at GBS Africa, based in London. A good evening to you, Agnes. We appreciate you coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Broadly speaking, what's your take on the just concluded Financing Africa Summit hosted in Paris earlier this week by President Emmanuel Macron?
My take, my honest opinion, Boston, another summit, one in a million, focused on the continent, but not happening in the continent, and not called for by African leaders. However, the topic of conversation, financing Africa, is key. My only concern, this should have happened in the city, in the continent, where the hosting this forum there would have had great impact on the tourism sector that has struggled due to COVID-19. So my take, Boston, another high-profile deliberation with people who are meant to be served by this deliberation far removed from the decision table.
Well, these are precedents, by the way, at least about 20 of them. But what are the chief takeaways of the summit for you, Agnes, in concrete terms? I know you're talking about tourism, for example, if this has been done in Nairobi or in Kigali or in Abuja or in Johannesburg or Pretoria, Durban, whatever, that could have at least bring some dollar inflows, by the way. But again, President Macron is the one paying for lunch and dinner.
There's never free lunch anywhere, Boston, and you know that.
I know that for sure.
However, key takeaways are the fact that Macron and other African leaders have decided to push, obviously, for IMF to reallocate funds with the IMF reserve funds towards Africa financing. 100 billion, according to him. Another significant outcome of this meeting was the 1.5 billion bridge loan towards Sudan, which France offered Sudan. This will go towards clearing Sudan's IMF arrears, and that opens up for Sudan's debt cancellation. There's already pledges over up to $10 billion towards cancelling Sudan's debt. So that, to me, is a very significant outcome of this out of this meeting. The $100 billion towards Africa financing from IMF, the proposals will come out in October, is also a positive step towards accessing finance to support Africa's recovery post-COVID.
Do you think we should say thank you also to President Macron when he also advised or urged the vaccine makers to take away, or countries to take away the patents on those vaccines so that we can manufacture these vaccines on the African continent, at least South Africa and a few others could as well make it much faster and distribute locally?
Absolutely. Vaccine rollout and ensuring that Africans have access to vaccine is significant. However, who made Macron African spokesperson? African leaders should have taken this initiative. And again, should we be looking out to them? Should Africa be building back better, building local capabilities to manufacture vaccine and to support the globe towards recovery? So, sorry, Boston, I'm not going to say merci beaucoup to Monsieur Macron. I should go and challenge African leaders who are looking up to these leaders to support us. Yet they're elected by the citizens to be their spokespersons.
Do you think, Agnes, that African heads of states are returning home with fair, equitable, and workable deals in their back pockets?
There were side meetings by private sector institutions. There were also pledges towards supporting Africa private sector, supporting African entrepreneurs. So to me, that's also a positive outcome from the meeting. Again, we went out with our begging bowls, again, Boston, as we always do. The only country for me that will be returning back to its people is Sudan. 10 billion worth of debt cancellation will have an incredible positive impact on Sudan's economic recovery after years of decline under former President Bashir. To others, these meetings, I cannot say it enough, this meeting should have happened in the continent. This meeting should have been hosted. This initiative should have come out from the Africans and not the Western leaders.
What is in this meeting for France and why? This is the first of such gatherings since Brexit last December. Do you think France is positioning here strategically?
Of course, there's been a rallying call. There's a lot of rave on Africa. I started this conversation by saying, how many summits have we had? Moscow Summit on Africa, UK Africa Summit, a lot of promises, Boston, and very little to show for it. Suddenly, Macron facing a re-election in next year. This meeting was important for him to position the country and himself as somebody with influence, both at home and in the global affairs. If the 100 billion special drawing rights is approved by the other members, this will be certainly a win for Macron, and I think it will earn him an African citizenship.
Yeah, Nigerian President Muhammadu Buhari spoke about the need for debt relief for Africa. What's your take on that?
So the only beneficiary to come out of this statement from President Buhari is Sudan. Obviously, there is cause for wealthy nations to cancel Africa's debt, particularly as we look towards building economies post COVID-19. Look, how many people will be willing to cancel Africa's debt? Remember, this is just talks, political, high-profile talks, with absolutely no tangible outcome and no tangible requirements on anybody. So they sat there, they said, this is what we would like. Everybody has asked for debt cancellation. We were hopeful that with COVID-19, this will be something the wealthy nations will take it as their moral duty towards African nations to cancel debts. However, we haven't seen for it, and it's up to the African leaders to constantly demand for it. However, Boston, if we can manage and mobilize domestic resource mobilization, if we can build our economies better and manage what our people have given us, we will not need any of this.
Of course, you also know that the World Bank President David Malpass spoke about announced this commitment, $150 billion over the next 5 years that should come under the IMF drawing right. Kristalina Georgieva, the IMF managing director, also made a few sound bites at the summit. Are these rhetorics or change of direction and action for good of the continent of Africa?
Look, they have a duty towards the continent. Remember, the call was for that you cannot leave the continent behind. But Boston, it will take the Africans to manage whatever resources we have to be able to achieve that. Yes, there were commitments. The IMF boss confirmed that the proposal on the special drawing rights and the 100 billion allocation will be out in October. Commitment by the World Bank. Again, these are commitments we've seen, and I do hope there is an outcome. But most importantly for me is the fact that channeling this investment to private sector, de-risking private capital so that we can see an influx of capital into the continent, because government funding and this funding from international bodies is not sufficient for the continent.
So what's the big lesson for African leaders and policymakers in this summit?
The big lesson is the next African summit should be under an acacia tree in the streets of Timbuktu, if there are trees left anyway. But the lesson for us, Boston, and for the African leadership is we have to come to these forums as a collective. You cannot go it alone. The continent has to position itself as 55 nations, rather than Nigeria going by themselves or Sudan going by themselves. We need to come as a collective. We need to negotiate as a collective and engage the international countries as a collective, not as individual nations, because that's the only way we can achieve results. And I've been very critical about this meeting, but the $100 billion SDR special drawing rights from IMF, if that comes true, I would say it is because African countries acted together. So working as a collective.
We thank you so much for those perspectives. As always, Agnes Gitau, Managing Partner at GBS Africa. Have a great evening in London.